Walton, thank you very much. Before I begin my remarks, I wanted to mention something that was in the news today that some of you may have heard about, and that is Robert Mueller today submitted his investigative report to the Attorney General. Now, I don't know what's in the report. Nobody does. I do know, however, that Mueller wound up indicting 34 people, including 6 Trump campaign officials. And I also know that it is absolutely imperative that the Trump administration make that report public as soon as possible. Nobody, including the President of the United States, is above the law. The American people have a right to know. And let me just welcome all of you. This is an extraordinary turnout, and I want to thank you all for being part of a campaign which is not only going to carry California, which is going to win the Democratic nomination, which is not only going to defeat Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in the modern history of our country. But with your help, and this is what Nina Turner was talking about, with your help, we are going to transform this country and create a government and an economy that works for all of us, not the 1%. Today, I welcome you to a campaign which says with confidence, with optimism, and with love that the underlying principles of our government will not be greed, will not be kleptocracy, will not be hatred, will not be lies. The underlying principles of our government will not be racism, will not be sexism, will not be xenophobia, will not be homophobia, will not be religious bigotry. Brothers and sisters, those ugly anti-American sentiments are going to end, and they're going to end soon. The principles of our government will be based on justice, economic justice, social justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. Now, Donald Trump and his friends want to divide us up based on the color of our skin, based on our gender, based on the country we were born in, based on our religion or our sexual orientation. Well, our campaign and our government are going to do exactly the opposite. We're going to bring our people together, black and white, Latino, Native American, Asian American, men and women, gay and straight, native-born and immigrant. That's what this campaign is about. And when I talk about justice, let me tell you exactly what I mean by that. It means that we will not sit idly by and allow this country to move toward an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires control the economic and political life of this country. We are not going to allow that. And when I talk about justice, it means that we will not allow 3 families in this country, 3 families, to own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. While at the same time, 20% of our children live in poverty, veterans are sleeping out on the streets, and 30 million Americans have no health insurance. That is not justice. Justice means that we will no longer accept a situation in which 46% of all new income is going to the top 1%. While at the same time, millions of Americans are working 2 or 3 jobs to pay the bills, and over half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Scared to death when you live paycheck to paycheck. Your car may break down. You can't get to work. You don't get to work, you get fired. You get fired, you can't take care of your kids. That is not the economy we want. Justice means that we will no longer accept the reality that CEOs of major corporations now make 300 times what their workers make. While in California, 130,000 people are homeless, and so many people, coast to coast, are living in despair that for the 3rd straight year, our life expectancy has actually gone down. Justice means that we will no longer accept a situation when the top 25 hedge fund managers on Wall Street make twice as much money as all of the kindergarten teachers in this country. And when we talk about injustice in this country, we are talking about racial injustice. At a time when this country is seeing massive levels of disparity, the situation is far worse for African American families. It is not acceptable to me or to you that black families in America own 1/10 of the wealth of white families, that the infant mortality rate for black women is 2.5 times higher than for white women, that redlining in housing continues to exist, that black businesses cannot get the loans they need at affordable rates, that black school districts continue to be underfunded, and that we have a criminal justice system that has much too much racism in it. So let us be clear. When we talk about justice, we mean ending institutional racism all across this nation. And when we talk about justice, it also means doing everything we can to end the growing tribalism and religious bigotry we are seeing in this country and around the world. Since Trump has been president, there has been a significant increase in hate crimes in this country. We are seeing more attacks against African Americans, against Jews, against gays, against immigrants, and against the Muslim community. And clearly, this is not just an American phenomenon. all of us are shocked beyond belief at the horrible massacre of Muslims in New Zealand that we saw last week. This is the year 2019, and we have seen for too long genocide. We have seen for too long levels of hatred that are unbelievable. We have seen too much divisiveness. So tonight we tell Donald Trump, we are no longer going to allow you to divide our nation up. And under our administration, we are going to lead the world in human rights, in bringing people together. We have got to end the hatred and divisiveness we see in this country and around the world. And when we talk about justice, we are talking about political justice. We are talking about creating a political system which is based on the democratic principle of one person, one vote. And we are going to end a corrupt system which allows billionaires to buy elections and which allows cowardly Republican governors to suppress the vote against people of color and poor people. Under our administration, we are going to make it easier for people to vote, not harder. Now, as many of you will recall, when we first launched our campaign back in 2015, very few folks took our campaign seriously. The ideas that we were talking about then were considered by establishment politicians and mainstream media to be radical and extreme. Ideas that they said would never be supported by the American people. You remember that? Raising the minimum wage to a living wage, too radical. Guaranteeing health care to all, too radical. Creating up to 15 million jobs by investing $1 trillion to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, too radical. Aggressively combating climate change and saving the planet, too legalizing marijuana. Oh my God. Now that is a radical idea that will never happen. Who the hell was talking about that? Reforming our broken criminal justice and immigration systems. Not having a super PAC or being dependent on the rich for campaign contributions. Imagine that. Too radical. All right, listen to this one. I mean, this is so far out, hard to believe. Imagine ending the power of superdelegates at the Democratic National Convention. Imagine that, allowing ordinary people to determine who becomes president, not wealthy political insiders. Well, brothers and sisters, a funny thing happened over the last several years. In 2016, we won victories in 22 states. We won over 13 million votes, over 1,700 delegates, not a lot of super delegates, real delegates. And what is most exciting to me, and I think most important, we ended up winning in 2016 more votes from young people, black and white and Latino, Asian American, Native Americans. We won more votes from young people than Trump and Clinton combined. And by the way, those ideas that we talked about 4 years ago here in California and around the country, those ideas that seemed so very radical, well, today, virtually all of those ideas are supported by a majority of the American people. And they are ideas that are being supported by Democratic candidates from school board to President of the United States. So, brothers and sisters, it turns out that justice is not such a radical idea. We have come a long way in the last 4 years. Now we are about to complete what we began. Now we are going to turn our vision and our progressive agenda into reality. We are going to bring the beautiful concept of justice back to America. As I stand before you this evening, let me mention something that I learned about this morning. And that is, it turns out that back in 1938, at this very location, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt gave a speech to the people of San Diego. And given the fact that FDR was one of the great presidents in the history of our country, I am honored to be here in this very spot 80 years later. And I want to mention to you this evening a point that FDR made late in his presidency, back in 1944. And what he said, and this is a very profound point, something that I strongly believe. He said that the Bill of Rights in our Constitution was enormously important in guaranteeing Americans political rights and political freedoms, freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, et cetera, et cetera. But Roosevelt made a point back in 1944 that is as true today as it was then. And what he says is that if the people of our country were going to be truly secure, were going to be truly free, we needed not only to guarantee political rights, we needed to guarantee economic rights. And what he talked about, again, this is way back in 1944, that in a democratic, civilized society, people have the right to a decent job, they have the right to health care, and Californians, they have the right to affordable housing, they have the right to education and retirement security. In other words, and this is a profound point that many of us believe in, economic rights are human rights. And that is why this evening we say to the private health insurance companies, whether you like it or not, the United States will join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a right. It is not a radical idea to suggest that all people have the right to go to a doctor when they are sick and not go bankrupt after they get out of the hospital. It is not a radical idea to say that we will no longer accept the absurdity of paying almost twice as much per capita for health care as do the people of any other nation on earth, while at the same time we have a lower life expectancy and we have worse health care outcomes than many other countries. The goal of health care is not complicated. It must be to provide quality care to all people in a cost-effective way. It is not, the goal of health care must not be to make insurance companies incredibly rich and to provide outrageous compensation packages for the CEOs of those companies. Now listen to this, and you tell me if this makes any sense at all. In 2017, a few years ago, the top 65 healthcare CEOs made $1.7 billion in compensation. And the guy who was head of United Healthcare made $82 million in compensation. 30 million Americans have no health insurance. We need a healthcare system that invests in disease prevention, that invests in doctors, in nurses, in dentists, in rural clinics. We don't need to maintain a system designed to make CEOs of insurance companies unbelievably rich. So tonight, we tell the insurance companies, whether they like it or not, we are going to pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. And when we talk about corporate greed, there is no entity more greedy than the pharmaceutical industry. So tonight, we say to the pharmaceutical industry, you will no longer continue to rip the American people off and charge us by far the highest prices for prescription drugs in the entire world. We will not accept 5 of the largest pharmaceutical companies making $50 billion in profits when 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford the medicine they desperately need. And tonight we say to Walmart and other low-wage employers, stop paying your workers starvation wages. Yes, we are going to raise the federal minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. Nobody who works in this country 40 hours a week should be living in poverty. And yes, we are going to make it easier for workers to join unions, not harder. Now, 4 years ago, when we talked about the idea of a $15 an hour minimum wage, it seemed like an impossible dream. That was doubling the federal minimum wage. Well, since then, we have successfully pressured Amazon and Disney here in California to raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour. Costco is now paying its workers $15 an hour minimum. 5 states in the country, including California, have raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And just last week, the House Education and Labor Committee reported out a bill that will pass the U.S. House to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. And by the way, an issue of enormous import that we have got to stay focused on when we talk about the economy. And that is, we say to corporate America that artificial intelligence and robotics are not going to be used just to throw American workers out on the street. This exploding technology must be used to serve human needs, not just corporate profits. Tonight, we say to the American people, we are going to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our water systems. This is America. People in California and across the country should be able to drink the water that comes out of their faucets. And when we rebuild our infrastructure with $1 trillion investment, we're going to create up to 13 million good-paying jobs. Trump and his friends want to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the rich and the large corporations. We're going to take that trillion back and invest it in the infrastructure. You know, when you talk to psychologists, they will tell you that the ages of 0 through 4 are the most important years of human development. It is a disgrace that in America we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth, and we have a child care system that is dysfunctional. So today we say to the parents of young kids, yes, we are going to have universal, affordable child care in this country. And today I want to say a word to the young people of America, and that is, we want you to have the best education you possibly can get, regardless of the income of your family. We live in a highly competitive global economy. We will not succeed unless we have the best educated workforce in the world. We once did, we no longer do. And that is why we are going to make public colleges and universities tuition-free. Let me ask you all a question. How many of you are carrying student debt? All right, here is my promise to you. If we don't entirely wipe out student debt, we're going to lower it very substantially. If the United States government can bail out the crooks on Wall Street, we can substantially lower student debt in this country. Today we say to our senior citizens, and we don't talk about this enough, there are a lot of seniors in California and in Vermont, all over this country. They're trying to get by on $12,000 or $13,000 a year. And when you're 80 and 90 and you have health care needs, you can't do that. Outrageously, in Washington, you have Republican leadership wanting to cut Social Security. Well, we got some bad news for them. We are not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security benefits. You know, Donald Trump, with his pathological lying and his hatred and his kleptocratic behavior, he embarrasses us every day. But there's one area which is not only embarrassing but absolutely dangerous for all of us, our kids, and the entire world. So tonight we tell Donald Trump, climate change is not a hoax. It is a dangerous reality for our country and the entire world. And whether Trump and his friends in the fossil fuel industry like it or not, we are going to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel. We are going to move to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And when we do that, we are going to lead the world in saving this planet. And we are going to create millions of good-paying jobs. And today, we say to the prison industrial complex that whether you like it or not, we are going to bring about real criminal justice reform. We are going to end the international embarrassment of the United States of America, our great country, having more people in jail than any other country on earth. Instead of spending $80 billion a year locking up fellow Americans, we are going to invest in our young people. We're going to invest in jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. When we talk about criminal justice, we mean no more private prisons and detention centers, no more locking people up as a result of the so-called war on drugs. Too many lives have been destroyed. Too many people have gotten criminal records for smoking marijuana. That is going to end. And when we talk about criminal justice, we're going to end the vulgarity of today. Hundreds of thousands of Americans are in jail as we speak, and their crime is poverty. They cannot afford cash bail. We're going to get rid of that as well. And by the way, when we talk about criminal justice reform, we're going to change a system in which tens of thousands of people get criminal records for the nonviolent act of possessing marijuana, but not one major Wall Street executive went to jail for destroying our economy as a result of their greed, recklessness, and illegal behavior. No, they didn't go to jail. They got $1 trillion bailout. Well, maybe we are old-fashioned, but we believe in justice for all, not just for the rich. And today, and I know this is an issue important to Southern California, we say that instead of demonizing the undocumented immigrants in this country, We are going to pass comprehensive immigration reform and provide a path toward citizenship. We are going to provide legal status to the 1.8 million young people who are eligible for the DACA program. And we are going to develop a border policy that is humane for those who seek asylum. When people travel hundreds and thousands of miles from Honduras or Guatemala to reach our borders, when they flee from poverty and violence, we are not going to snatch the babies out of the arms of their mothers. Now, people sometimes say to me, they say, you know, Bernie, you're talking about making public colleges and universities tuition-free, rebuilding our infrastructure. You're spending a lot of money. That's true. That is true. Where are we going to get that money? Well, tell you a couple of areas. Today, we say to the top 1% and the large profitable corporations in this country, people who have never had it so good, that under our administration, we're going to end those massive tax breaks and those massive tax loopholes. And the billionaires and profitable corporations in this country are going to start paying their fair share of taxes. What can one say about a corrupt political system when you have Amazon, one of the wealthiest, most profitable corporations in America, last year paying how much in taxes? Don't tell me we don't have enough money to rebuild this country. And today we also say to the military-industrial complex, we want a strong defense and we need a strong defense. But we don't need to continue fighting in never-ending wars. And we do not need to spend 10 times more. We don't need to spend more than the next 10 countries combined. Brothers and sisters, we are going to defeat Donald Trump. And I'll tell you how we're going to defeat Donald Trump. We're not going to defeat him because we have a super PAC, and we're not going to defeat him because we have billionaires funding our campaign. That's not us. We are going to defeat him because we are going to put together an unprecedented grassroots effort. And I am really proud to tell you that as of today, we have well over 1 million Americans in every state in this country who have signed up to work on this campaign, to roll up their sleeves to make sure that we win. And I know something about grassroots politics because that's what I've been doing my entire political life. And I do it kind of naturally because I do not come from a wealthy family like Trump, a family which gave him millions of dollars to build luxury skyscrapers, casinos, and country clubs. I did not come from a family that sent my brother and me to elite private schools. We went to public schools. I did not come from a family that gave me a $200,000 a year allowance starting at the age of 3. As I think back on it, my mother gave me an allowance of 25 cents a week. Now, as all of you will recall, just a few months ago, Donald Trump boasted. He boasted about shutting down the government and leaving 800,000 federal employees without income, left them without income to pay their bills. Now, I guess when you are a billionaire like Trump, you may not understand that what it is like for a family to live paycheck to paycheck, what it is like to need that check to pay the mortgage, to pay for childcare, to put gas in the car. Now, my family did live paycheck to paycheck. I know where I came from, and that is something I will never forget. I will not be shutting down the federal government. Now, brothers and sisters, you're going to be hearing a lot of campaign rhetoric over the next many months. So I wanted to take this opportunity to be as specific as I can with you about what a Bernie Sanders administration will be. When we are in the White House, and I use that word "we" advisedly, because it is not me, it is us. When we are in the White House, we are going to enact what Franklin Delano Roosevelt talked about 80 years ago, and that is we are going to guarantee a job for everybody who is able to work in this country. We need to rebuild our infrastructure. We need to transform our energy system. We need more workers in healthcare. We need to create a new child care system. There is more than enough work to be done in this country. Let's go out and do it. When we together are in the White House, we are not only going to end the decline in rural America, but we are going to attack the problem of urban gentrification and rising rents in America. Now, I know that in California, and in fact in many parts of this country, people are paying 40, 50, 60% of their limited incomes for housing. That's wrong. We're going to build the affordable housing that the American people need. When we are in the White House, we are going to move aggressively to end the epidemic of gun violence in this country and pass common sense gun safety legislation that the American people overwhelmingly support. When we are in the White House, we are going to protect a woman's right to control her own body. That decision is a woman's decision, not the federal government, not the state government, not the local government. And we are going to fight to make sure that women continue to maintain that right. Make no mistake about it. The struggle that we are talking about this evening goes far beyond defeating Donald Trump, as important as that is. And what I'm saying is, I don't want to become president and then do what many other presidents have done, and that is not fulfill their campaign promises. But this is what I want to say when I talk about it being us, not me. And that is that no president, not the most honest and well-intentioned person in the world, can do it alone. So I'm going to tell you what no other candidate will tell you. And that this struggle that we are engaged in is about taking on the incredibly powerful institutions that control the economic and political life of our nation. And I'm talking about Wall Street. I'm talking about Wall Street, where 6 financial institutions have assets equivalent to 54% of the GDP of America. I am talking about the insurance companies. If anybody here thinks that we are going to create a Medicare for all system without having the guts to take on the drug companies and the pharmaceutical industry, you are sorely mistaken. Now, a few years ago, I was here in California. I'll never forget this. There was an item on your ballot, referendum, which was fairly modest in saying that state government here in California should not spend any more for prescription drugs than does the Veterans Administration, which pays the lowest prices in the country for medicine. I was here campaigning, and it turned out that in that campaign, in one state, on one modest proposal, the pharmaceutical industry spent $131 million to defeat it. So taking on the insurance companies, taking on the drug companies, taking on the military-industrial complex, taking on agribusiness, taking on the prison-industrial complex, taking on the fossil fuel industry, this is not a walk in the park. This is going to require millions of people standing up and fighting back and telling the powerful special interests that we are sick and tired of their greed, which is destroying the middle class of this country. Now, these powerful special interests, they have an unlimited amount of money, they have an unlimited amount of power, they have a lot of influence in the corporate media. But we have something that they do not have. After all, they are only the 1%, we are the 99%. Now, we have clearly an enormous amount of work to do if we are going to win the election and transform this country. But this is what I believe from the bottom of my heart. And that is, if we stand together and we don't allow Trump and his friends to divide us up, if we stand together, black and white and Latino and Asian American and Native American, if we stand together as gay and straight, men and women, native-born and immigrant, if we stand together as urban and rural, north, south, east, and west, if we stand together, we are not only going to defeat these powerful special interests, but we are going to create a nation, the likes of which this world has never seen. Brothers and sisters, I am enormously optimistic in terms of this campaign and in terms of what happens after. If we keep our eyes on the prize, if we embrace love and not hatred, if we are prepared to work hard and with courage, we are going to make American history. We're going to transform this country. And I thank you all very much for being here tonight.